Reggie Miller joined us in the first hour, and he accused the Lakers of treating that game like it was a preseason game. Bill Oram covers the Lakers for The Athletic. What do you think of what Reggie Miller had to say about that?
Well, they sure played like it was a preseason game and did not bring the requisite intensity you would expect when you are on the brink of falling into a hole that will potentially lead to elimination. You're the defending champions, and it's always interesting to see who steps up in these situations vocally. And one guy who's become kind of a leader or a truth teller for this Lakers team is Markieff Morris. And listening to him last night, I mean, you're not going to get it much straighter than Markieff Morris, who said that the Lakers, this would be the time for their championship DNA to present itself, because they have not played with the desperation this season that you would expect. And so, the truth will be on Thursday night. And Frank Vogel said the same thing. We will find out how bad we want this.
But I keep waiting for somebody else to step up. LeBron is not going to play 40 minutes. He's not going to put up 45. Dennis Schroeder scored what I scored last night, Bill. Kyle Kuzma, somebody needs to step up. I mean, is it really that hollow of a roster did I totally overrate this roster when I thought they added some new pieces? They might be better than the team that was in the bubble?
Well, first of all, your defense was invaluable, though, Dan. But I think we all maybe overrated this roster a little bit. And there's so many things you can point to over the course of the season where it's, obviously the quick turnaround and the number of new pieces. But there are things. Montrezl Harrell was unplayable in the playoffs last year against Denver. And he was the crown jewel of the Lakers offseason. They gave him $9 million. It looked like a steal. He can't get on the court in this series. Yeah. So what was the value of that addition if it's not somebody who can help you in the playoffs? Marc Gasol, heralded addition. You go out and sign his replacement while he's dealing with COVID. So not a lot of trust there. And like you said, Dennis Schroeder not playing well. So the Lakers, they made splashy moves, but here we are with the season on the line, and those players are not contributing in a meaningful way. And so I don't know quite how you unpack this season just yet. You could certainly point to the injury for Anthony Davis. I mean, it is obviously a massive blow, but you kind of have to look at this moment as more of a culmination of a series of obstacles over the course of the season, and the moments that the Lakers had where you would have expected them to start looking like a champion, and it hasn't happened. From the roster moves to some of the kind of bewildering losses along the way to apparent kind of apathy at times. I just think this team has never looked like the best team in the NBA, and we've sort of given them the credit of being last year's champion and dominating in the bubble where they were so tremendous, but we haven't seen that team again this year.
We had Chris Bosh on last hour, and Chris suffered the similar injury that AD has. And he said he doesn't think you'll see Anthony Davis the rest of the postseason, even if the Lakers advance. How serious are the Lakers letting on that this is a serious injury, or can 1 day, 2 days, 3 days of rest help him play in Game 6?
I think the real answer is that we don't know, because the Lakers have one small advantage, and it's that only they know. And so they can at least force Phoenix to prepare for Anthony Davis, even if he's not going to play. And it was a little bit of, a game of cat and mouse going into Game 5, where the Lakers said he's going to be a game time decision. And I sat my butt in that arena, 2.5 hours before the game and watched him come on the court. And he, did maybe the lightest pregame workout I've ever seen. A few light jumpers, a couple step backs, nothing that indicated he was actually trying to get ready to play in an NBA game, let alone a playoff game. And after the game, when we asked Dennis Schroeder, like, oh, how disappointing was it that AD wasn't able to go? He's like, oh, we already knew. We knew he wasn't going to be able to play. So I do think there is a little bit of gamesmanship going on with this injury. I think the hope would be that, you get him 4 days off between games 4 and 6, and he's able to at least give it a go. And, he played through a sprained knee in Game 4. Anthony Davis has a certain reputation when it comes to injuries, but he's shown a willingness to try to play through pain, particularly this postseason. But, a groin injury, and, you only need to go back to LeBron James 2 years ago to remember how devastating this can be to a team's chances. The Lakers went from 4th in the West to being out of the playoffs because LeBron missed a quarter of the season with what ended up being a torn groin. And this doesn't sound as severe, but in a short period of time, and when one game is the difference in your season, it can be just as crippling.
What do you think of the nickname that Barkley bestowed upon Anthony Davis?
Was that was that street clothes Davis?
Yeah.
A little mean, but I
Oh, a
mean,
lot mean. A lot mean. Yeah.
but I do think, I mean, Anthony Davis had a reputation as a player who was injured a lot before he came from New Orleans, and really I think was bucking that last year, where he was really healthy a year ago and was so good in the bubble. I think it's a new chapter for him, and he's obviously at the beginning of his Lakers journey. He's going to start first year of a 5-year max contract, but I mean, he has to be on the floor for the Lakers to reap the benefits of what he brings, because when he's healthy, he's one of the most supremely and diversely talented players in the league. But he goes down a lot. He looks hurt a lot, and this year those injuries have turned out to be real a lot.
Did anybody ask LeBron why he left early?
LeBron had a very brief media session last night, I would say. Frank Vogel's answer to that was just that he needs to get his treatment. And preparing for a game 6. I think this is something we've seen from LeBron a couple of times, and there is, I think, no doubt, an element of frustration. He's watching Alfonso McKinney and Ben McLemore heave bricks in a 30-point loss in a playoff game, and he's not getting any help. But also, I mean, this is a guy who is 36, dealing with a sprained ankle. He has never missed a playoff game in his career, and there's a quick turnaround to a game 6 and a flight back to Los Angeles. I think there is probably, if we put the pitchforks down just a little bit, a little bit of, you can understand the need for him to get on the training table. That's probably more important than him being supportive of Ben McLemore and Alfonso McKinney. But the optics, I agree, are always bad. But we've seen it from him before. We've seen it in the last month, even, where the Lakers are getting run out of the building, and he gets up and just heads back to start his treatment early.
What do you think happens in Game 6?
I think they could lose. I really think that this could be the end of their season, because I need them to prove that they want this, that they are interested in what the challenge of being repeat champions looks like. The Lakers last night did not look interested. They did not look like a team that has any interest in getting back on a plane and coming to Phoenix. They have not looked like a team with a great deal of belief in themselves, dating back to their loss early in May to the Toronto Raptors, which was kind of the low point of the season. LeBron re-aggravated his ankle. Kyle Kuzma said, we're just not good enough. They've trended upwards since that moment, but here they are getting kind of smacked back down again to a higher seed, a team that is playing like a team. And I don't know that the Lakers have. I think the onus is obviously on the Lakers. They trail 3-2 to prove that this is something they can do or they even want to do, because I have not seen many signs from this team that they believe that they have any business viewing themselves as championship contenders anymore.
Do they just run it back next year if they bow out here in the first round, or will there be any kind of seismic changes here, Bill?
I mean, Rob Pelinka overhauled the roster that won a championship. I have a hard time imagining him standing pat with a team that flames out in the first round, if that's indeed what happens. There are some big decisions, though. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, who you mentioned earlier, has, in my mind, cost himself a lot of money in these playoffs. I mean, this is a guy who turned down an $84 million contract extension, which I think is a huge turning point in this season, by the way, when the Lakers turned around and said, okay, you don't want to sign a contract extension, we'll trade you to Toronto for Kyle Lowry, a deal that almost happened. And I think in hindsight would have benefited the Lakers at this point. Does Dennis Schroeder view himself differently? Does he come back to the bargaining table, or does he go somewhere else and try to find a 1-year deal to get himself where he wants to be? I'm not sure the Lakers view him as a $17 million player anymore. Yeah. So that's going to be a huge question. Montrezl Harrell has a player option. They have big questions at the center position. I don't think Andre Drummond or Marc Gasol is the answer there. I think there's a lot of changes you would want to make to the roster, but you're also locked into a lot of these guys. Montrezl Harrell probably not going to opt out of $9 million. KCP is probably here to stay. And Alex Caruso, who's one of the best values in the NBA, is going to be an unrestricted free agent and highly sought after. So I think there's a lot of potential for this roster to change, but you do have the benefit of knowing that you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis locked in. And when they're healthy, that is enough to at least contend.
Is the city of Los Angeles ready for a moment where the Lakers aren't in the postseason and the Clippers are?
I don't think the city of Los Angeles cares what the Clippers do. It is the 40th straight year in which that is the case. The Clippers have, and listen, I like the Clippers. I like their story. I like what they have. Obviously, you would love to see the Lakers Clippers playoff series eventually. But in terms of like, my day to day at the grocery store or dropping my kids off at the Montessori school in Redondo Beach each morning, no one is sitting around like going, "Oh man, I've got Clippers fever." It has never happened. I don't know. I don't know how many championships the Clippers would have to win before it would permeate just like my bubble. But the Lakers, as we always say, the Lakers, the Clippers could win the championship, and the headline the next day would be, "Why didn't the Lakers win the championship?"
Yeah, still a little drama left to be written here, but you got an easy job, Bill. I mean, you always got a storyline, right?
I mean, it is certainly true with these guys. It's one thing or another. They are the biggest story in the NBA. Well, it's the benefit of covering LeBron James. But it might be the biggest story of the NBA offseason pretty quickly.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's Bill Oram. He covers the Lakers for The Athletic.